Dearest friend, I found a place I believe you will want to visit. In an alley between a hospital and a butcher shop is a very small costume shop. The only sign it is there is a small door and a small window that shows a smiling jack-o'-lantern inside of the shop. During most of the day, the shop is closed. The shop opens 1 hour before sunset, and it closes 1 hour after sunrise, being one of the few businesses in Swamp City that is open overnight. Some say the reason why it's able to stay open overnight is because the shopkeeper himself is one of the many serial killers who stalks Swamp City streets, using the shop like a trapdoor to attract prey into his shop. Others say that he is something that even the killers fear. Others still say that due to the nature of his shop, that he is protected by the Marquess of Madness. When I reach the shop and I ask the shopkeeper for his stories, he regards me for a moment before he turns his attention back to the masks he is working on. Even though I have asked him for his name many times, he only tells me that he is too old to bother with names, even though the man in front of me doesn't appear to be that old. His hair is dark with silver streaks, his hands calloused from years of hard work. He still moves with purpose and patience and great speed. His clothes, however, they resemble an old surgeon's scrubs from centuries ago. His mask resembles the beak of a bird with tinted glass over his eyes, and when he stands close to me, I can smell lavender from beneath his mask. After a long moment of him carving intricate detail into the mold in front of him, he finally speaks, and he shares his first story with me. While he speaks, I sit on a chair next to him, taking notes and listening quietly while he shares his stories. A long time ago, before the Age of Ash, there was a wandering tribe that wanted my services. They lived in a fertile valley, and another tribe from the mountains wanted their food, their home, and their flesh for their own. The valley tribe had already been attacked 3 times, and now they were down to only a few dozen. They heard that I had the ability to change people into fearsome beasts. At first, I was going to turn them away, but I saw the desperation in their eyes, a desperation I have seen many times before. The eyes of someone who had refused to be a victim anymore. The eyes of someone who has decided that they weren't going to run anymore. So, I agreed to help them. I told the Valley tribe to collect volcanic ashes from the base of the mountain, soot from their own campfires, clay from the river, fur from badgers, and to bring them all to me in separate bowls. Sure enough, they succeeded, and I painted over their faces and bodies. I would use the ash, the soot, and clay to make grays, blacks, and reds to make them look fearsome in the low light of the setting sun. I would paint them on by using the badger fur as my paintbrush. They looked more like beasts in the low light, beasts with extra eyes, large teeth, deadly claws, and fearsome fur. I told the Valley tribe that when the Mountain tribe came that night, they would have to fight back, but when the Mountain tribe saw them, they would see them as monsters. I also warned them, before the sun rose, they would have to wash off all of the paint, before dawn's purifying light dried it permanently into their skin, changing them permanently into the monsters they appeared to be. On the first night, the Valley tribe pushed back the Mountain tribe out of the valley, and the Valley tribe successfully washed off the paint before dawn came. Now, with a victory under their belt, the Valley tribe stopped talking about defense and started discussing what it would take to take the territory from the Mountain tribe. So the Valley tribe visited me again. This time they sought conquest and not defense. So I asked for some different ingredients. This time I asked for the glowing worms from the bushes, the blood from the snails in the river, and finally the blue stone that we now know of as lapis lazuli. From these ingredients, I made their nails, eyes, and mouths glow in the dark. I made them resemble ghosts, and like before, I warned them to wash off the paint before the sun rose, otherwise it would dry on their skin permanently. The Valley tribe, now resembling ghosts, no longer fighting back and scaring the Mountain tribe, went into hunting and tormenting the Mountain tribe. The Valley tribe removed the skin, teeth, and fingers of those they captured, leaving the dying bodies in front of the caves and tents of the Mountain tribe, where the survivors cowered behind their fires, terrified of the monsters that the Valley tribe became. They pled and promised that they would never return to the valley, but the ghosts beyond their smoke and fires only stared back with their glowing eyes, teeth, and fingers, enough to let them know that they remained. They did manage to wash off the paint before dawn came, but now with the taste of blood on their tongues and the taste of vengeance in their hearts, the Valley tribe asked for my services one last time. They asked to have the power to finally vanquish their enemies. I told them, "Your enemies cower from the thought of you. You've killed their strongest hunters. You've left mothers, fathers, and parents dying in front of their children. They will spend generations warning their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren to never enter the valley in fear of angry monsters like you. You can stop now and be the monsters that they fear to transgress. If you continue this path, you will no longer be what they dread. You will become something else entirely," I warned them. But the Valley tribe no longer wanted defense and survival. They dreamed of making the Mountain tribe's caves, tools, weapons, and homes their own. They were no longer dreaming of peace. They were now dreaming of wasteland, but they thought that it was peace. I could see in their eyes that even if I refused to give them what they wanted, they would continue their massacre anyway. So I told them to gather the skins of beasts that had to be removed while the beast lived. Then they would have to gather the flesh of the people that they left to die, and to gather bowls full of their own blood, still warm, liquid, and fresh. They brought what I requested, and I told them to consume the flesh of the men they left to die, and while they ate, I smeared their own blood onto their body, along with the skins of the beasts. Now with their new skins, what used to be the Valley tribe continued their slaughter of the Mountain tribe. No longer cowering from flame and stone weapons, the Beast clan now tore the last of the Mountain tribe to pieces, consuming their flesh, blood, and bone underneath the full moon. The Beast clan left no survivors of the Mountain tribe, and with the death of the Mountain tribe, also sealed the death of the Valley tribe. When the Beast clan finished their extermination, they tried to bathe in the river, but now the water couldn't wash away the blood that glued the beast's skin to their own skin. No matter how much they scrubbed at their own skin, and no matter how much water they used, there was more blood acting as glue. They had killed so many that the blood had soaked through their pelts into their skin, sealing them inside. And when dawn's purifying light came, it dried the pelts to their skins permanently. And so the Valley tribe was now the Beast clan. And even though the Beast clan would spend the rest of their days trying to seek me out, I was long gone. And eventually the children and the children's children of the Beast clan forgot that they were descended from humanity. All they knew was blood, fur, and death. And that is what they still carry with them. There is silence as he finishes the mask he worked on. Now satisfied with his work, he moved from the monster mask to a long bolt of leather that he begins to cut to his own invisible measurements that only the mask maker understands. He hums to himself softly as he begins to cut the leather out into shapes that would allow him to make a brand new mask. As he continues, he starts with a different story. Disease has been around long before humanity has ever existed, and it will be here long after humanity has passed. Possibly caused by disease, it may be caused by something else entirely. Humanity's many close calls with disease often defines its history. I was working in Lundain at the time when the Great Pestilence reached the city. Those were very dark times. In mere months, the great city was reduced to a mere shadow of itself. The illness could spread so quickly that a man could begin at dawn, whistling his way to work. By noon, he was vomiting and covered in blisters, and by sundown, he was dumped into a hastily dug grave. There was no answers, only fears and misunderstandings. Miasma was blamed by many, and it was treated by inhaling smoke and smelling strong herbs. And when miasma couldn't be the problem, they blamed the Jews. And when pogroms and mass executions didn't fix the problem, they blamed their woes on the will of their gods. During those dark times, fear was deadly, and the treatments for the pestilence was even worse than the pestilence itself. During the autumn of the first year, a doctor approached me, and he asked if I could make him something that could keep the pestilence away from him, so he could help his patients. He had been lucky so far to avoid the illness, but he had seen how devastating it could be. In his eyes, I saw a man so hollow, he felt like there was no tomorrow worth living for. And still he endured. So I agreed to make him something that would keep him safe. I made for him a long leather overcoat, gloves, and boots that would keep blood away from his skin and body. Then I made for him a cowl to keep the pestilence from his neck and head. And then finally, for his face, I crafted for him a mask I am sure you will find very familiar. A long beaked mask that was meant to scare away evil spirits, and the inside of the beak he could fill it with flowers to filter miasma away from himself. And finally, I gave him a hollow cane that could be used to feel the heartbeat of his patients without requiring him to remove his gloves nor mask. Now, with his protective coverings made, I told the doctor, "While you are within these robes and while you wear this mask, neither pestilence nor mortality can touch you, but always wear them while around the ill or around the dead. If you remove them around the ill or the dead, then what you will carry within yourself will be far worse than the great pestilence." I warned the doctor, and he listened as he put on his robes, gloves, and mask, and he made his way through the streets of Lundain. For many months, all I heard was rumors of his work. Tales of a doctor in dark robes and a mask that could scare away death, administering his own formulas made from mold and wine, cleaning people's homes with vinegar, and even performing surgery in his leather robes. One day, though, during the winter months, when the pestilence slowed, but not ceased, the doctor made a fatal mistake. He was caring for a young boy, but the boy was terrified of the mask. The doctor thought the boy's illness was mild, and that he could risk removing his mask long enough for the boy to see he was harmless. He did help his patient, But soon after, the doctor found himself covered in the same black blisters and buboes that he saw on his patients. The pestilence was now inside him, but it was a lot harsher than the pestilence that infested Lundain and Europa. When he grabbed flowers to replace what was in his mask, the flowers died and decayed from his touch. Any creature or beast he touched would also decay from his touch. And to the doctor's horror, the decay would be quicker than the death. So he could only watch in horror as the patients he tried to treat would have their limbs rot away, their blood vessels carrying the decay into their hearts faster than the limbs could be amputated. Even when he wore his mask, gloves, and robes, it only slowed down his decaying touch. It didn't stop it. He couldn't even drink nor eat, because food would turn rotten in his fingers or his mouth before he had a chance to swallow, and when he did try to eat it, the rot only made him vomit. When he drank wine, beer, or any alcohol, it would turn to vile vinegar before he had a chance to swallow it. The water he tried to swallow would turn as thick as slime and would be impossible for him to swallow. Everywhere he stepped, he only brought suffering, decay, and death. The doctor tried to seek me out, but by that point, I no longer lived in Lundain, and like all men, he died after mere days from his own thirst, his corpse full of the slimy water he tried to swallow, in a desperate attempt to slack his thirst. Unfortunately, the decay did not die with his body. 3 different men died trying to move his body to the corpse pit. Their steel and leather tools may have slowed the decay, but it didn't stop the decay from affecting their bodies. After the 3rd death, the Lord Chamberlain had a pyre built on top of the corpse, careful to drop the logs quickly and to light it with pitch. This, thankfully, killed the decay as it burned both corpse, mask, and robes alike. And the Lord Chamberlain would continue his duties in his own specially constructed glass box that he believed would protect him from the great pestilence. The mask maker is finished, and I can see the familiar beak of a plague doctor mask. He continues studying the leather to more leather, careful to cut in the air holes, but also allowing it to be able to filter out any possible disease. Even if this mask is meant to be a costume, the mask maker's pride in his own work means that he will create something that is meant to work. As Samhain, or Feralia as the Romans called it, became more popular, so did masks. Everyone loved how scary they could be. They loved how they could be someone else for a night. Joy could be shared that used to only exist in Venetian carnivals, could now be enjoyed by many. However, some took the opportunity to become someone else a lot longer than a single night. When I was still working in Imperial City, I was offered one of the largest individual commissions that I have ever gotten. A customer wanted over a dozen masks made, masks that could make the wearer become something different for Feralia night. The customer paid in advance and told me they wanted my very best work, and that is what I gave them. 12 monster masks were made, and 1 mask made to resemble a man was made. Each monster mask was a different monster. Each one would imbue the wearer with the power of the beast they were disguised at. A taste of monstrous power, a taste of being something different from what they were. The mask of a man would make the wearer appear as human to everyone around them, both in the exoteric and esoteric senses. These masks were given to the customer, along with the warning. If the mask is worn too long, The wearer may forget that the mask was indeed just a mask. Depending on the will of the wearer, that may be after a full night with the mask on, or possibly as long as wearing it for a week. I warned and suggested they not wear the masks for longer than 2 hours at a time. The customer agreed and moved on with the mask. Where did those masks go? I am not certain. Sometimes I will hear rumors of crimes committed by a ghost, or a werewolf, or even a sea folk, and the description would be close to my masks, but I cannot prove that they are indeed using my masks to commit these crimes. What I do know is that the monster masks can imbue the wearers with the powers of the beast, are some of my most popular masks, and I sell at least one every week. What I also know is that I often see those shopping for a mask from me, not realizing that they are already wearing one of my masks. They just know that they want to change again, and they believe that the only way to do so is with a new mask. They believe this so wholeheartedly, the thought of removing their mask to what lies below has never occurred to them. They don't even remember that the mask is there. The mask maker stops his work on the plague doctor mask, and instead he reaches his hand to where my head reaches my neck, and he grabs what I thought was my skin. When he pulls up, he tugs a mask off my face. I can breathe clearer than I could before, and my skin feels sweaty and cool, something I didn't realize was possible. I reach up to where my cheek is, and I could feel my face for the first time in a long time. The mask maker holds the mask in his hands. In his hands is a reflective mask, polished as clear as a mirror, with no visible way to speak, see, nor smell through it, even though I could do so without difficulty. An angel's mask. Do you remember who you are without the mask? He asks me, and I think about it for a moment before I nod. Even though I cannot see his face, I am sure that he is smiling. Do you still want your mask back? He asked, and I nod again. The temperature in the room drops, the lights flicker, and the city outside quiets after I nod. I can see his grip tighten on my mask. For a dark moment, I fear that he is going to keep my mask. In the reflection of the mask, I can see my true face. Unruly brown hair, empty gray eyes, a lightly freckled face, and a crooked smile that is on my face, despite my best efforts. A face that I have faced in the mirror too many times. A face that I have seen far too many more times as I drowned my victims in the star swamp. The face that I saw smiling back at me over the struggling, drowning faces of my victims. People always thought about the men who want to use masks to make themselves into monsters. The stalker on the street who thrives in the anonymity his mask gives him. The butcher who uses the mask to keep blood from entering his eyes while he stared at the meat he tore apart. The creeper who wanted his victims to see a monster as their last sight in life. People rarely think about the monster who wanted to use masks to become an angel. I am the drowner of Dawn River Road. I remember the night so many months ago. I came into this shop. I needed something to cover my face while I committed my murders. Something to disguise me from cameras and phones. I saw the angel mask and bought it, thinking that a reflective mask was perfect. I remember the mask maker warning me that if I wore it too long, I would forget the mask was ever there. I remember wearing the mask, and I remember the doubts when I tried to find my prey. The pretty blonde that I followed to her house, only to see that she had a tricycle in front of her house, and I realized she was a mother. I remember a little voice in the back of my head telling me that I couldn't leave a child an orphan, so I moved on. My next potential victim, a barista who burnt my latte. I remember seeing the mask in the shop's mirror, and my first thought that I was going to say out loud was, "People have died for less." Instead, what came out of my mouth was, "Your day is going to get better." It brought tears to her eyes, and I simply walked away. No plans on stalking her, nor watching her until night came. Across the weeks, I simply stopped killing, and I remember the first time I intervened in another wolf's hunt. A petty slasher with a barber's razor stood over his victim, already torn up from earlier slashes. Even though his victim had his arms up to protect himself, and he was begging for mercy, the slasher continued his slow work. I watched, and I broke the second law of Swamp City. I interfered with another killer's kill. When killers encounter each other in the streets, unless there's a territorial or personal dispute, we almost never acknowledge each other. And while wolves rarely help each other, even in passing, we will never intervene nor interfere with another's killer's kill. To do so will mark you as a target to all of the killers of Swamp City. I grabbed the slasher's arm with the blade, and I simply stabbed the blade into the slasher's neck. Then I offered my hand to the cowering man. As I pulled him up, I hugged the man until he stopped crying. Then I asked him where he lived, and I escorted him home. From there, I became known as the Angel of Swamp City. I even forgot that I was once a killer on these streets. I walked the streets at night, protecting the victims from the killers, and killing the killers. I became wanted by the other killers, and I remember running into the shop to escape. Then I asked the mask maker for his stories. "Please, let me have my mask back," I asked him, reaching out for my angel mask. My urge to kill was returning with a vengeance. I could feel the deep craving to drown my victims again. I needed to see their deaths. I needed to feel their struggles against my hands. I needed to be a killer again. But I didn't want to be a killer anymore. I wanted to feel like an angel again. I wanted to be a protector again. I wanted to forget what I was. The mask maker hands me my angel mask, and I put it on my face again. I could feel the little voice of the mask return, but I could still remember I was once a killer. So I reassured myself. I just had to keep wearing the mask. I just had to keep wearing it. I just had to keep wearing it. And eventually, I would forget that I was just a monster wearing a mask.